Why, hello there, Awesome Soul here, and today we are going to be discussing the Golemancer. And this is actually one of my creations, so in this video I'm basically going to step through my design philosophy with the class, and also general tips for how to play it. So if you're a player looking to potentially pick this class up over on the DM's Guild, or if you're a DM who's going to be running this class in their game, maybe sit back, relax, and get a drink or something, because we are going to go through my beautiful creation. Speaking of beautiful, this cover art is incredibly beautiful. This is by Zach Frost, and he's worked with me in basically all my stuff. So big props to him, big shout out. Of course, I do pay my my artists, so it's not like free work or anything. Anyway. Got the table of contents here, and a little Moppet down there. Aren't they adorable? So, in this class, you're going to get count them, 6 subclasses, aka your design philosophies, and also your Golem Core index, which this class, despite being very magical, is not a spellcaster. They have no spells. However, the Golem Cores can produce spell-like effects, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I should also mention the Patreon supporters for March. We've got Critical Clown and Wandering Draco. So, thank you for your continued support, and hey, if you like what you see here, maybe head on over to the Patreon, see what else I have there. I've got a lot of stuff, but, you know, I'll keep it brief. We're here for the Golemancer, not the Patreon. So, this is what the Golemancer is all about, your flavor text here. I'm not going to read it all out, but basically, it is a class where you build a golem, you hop inside, and you wreak havoc. If your golem goes down, though, you're gonna have a little bit of an issue. On top of that, you've got your tool proficiencies and what have you, and the Moppets as well. But getting ahead of myself, let's just go step by step. So, this is the Golemancer class table. You've got your design philosophy at first level, and, well, a bunch of other things. Again, we should probably go step by step. Anyway, as you can see here, though, like I said before, this is not a spellcasting class. It basically has its own magic system, which is, pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Think of it almost like an artificer, a little bit. But it plays a lot differently than an artificer, obviously. This is more just like in the way that you make them. You're basically making multi-purpose doodads that you can either use and hold in your hand and work one way, or you throw it onto the battlefield and you do another thing. So you can learn quite a few of them, though this 14 that it, air quotes, maxes out as, is a little deceptive, because there are class features that let you pick and choose from certain cores. But moving on from there, this, as I kind of alluded to earlier, if you lose your mech, you're a little bit in hot water, as this is a D6 class. So, yeah, have fun with a D6 and no armor proficiencies. However, the golem will protect you. So if you're inside the golem, you're not going to take any damage. And you've got all these powerful abilities that you can only use while you're in the golem, but there are a few things you can only do while you're outside of the golem. So it's a very risk-reward kind of class. You want to go into the heat of battle, pummel things with your golem, or do you want to maybe play it a bit more safely, just so you don't go down as a character, and, you know, keep your golem around a bit longer? Starting equipment, pretty standard, though I will point out 2 light hammers. Pretty flavorful pick. It's really there for the flavor, because, I don't know, I just don't see people using light hammers enough, and I think they're kind of neat. But anyway, the actual class features. So, design philosophy. Yes, this is in fact a first level subclass. This is by design. This is a conscious choice on my decision. The big thing here, though, is flavor. It does not make sense for this to get its subclass at any other point than first, just because of how the way subclasses work with this. The subclasses basically flavor your golem and let it do certain things, like live wood, for example. Live wood, instead of, constructing a golem out of metal or what have you, you're actually growing your golem. So think like a tree or a giant bundle of vines, something like that. And that would not make sense to just get a generic golem that you've built and you're proud of, and you're like, yeah, woohoo, here we go, and then you get to level 3, and now you get a subclass option, and it's like, well, okay, how does that work? You now have a construct that is now a plant, so you just scrap your old golem, you know what I mean? And besides that, you'll see a little bit onward that the stuff you get from your subclass at first level isn't all that powerful. It basically kind of vaguely defines how your golem is going to play, and then eventually at later levels your golem gets more powerful. So, the workshop. I noticed you've probably been looking down here. Workshop, ooh, what's that? That sounds interesting. It is not quite a workshop until you get to 7th level, but we'll get to that when we get to that. At first level, this basically just acts as a little pocket dimension that you yourself can't go into, as it's not properly stabilized and hospitable to outside life. But you just put your golem in there. After you finish a long rest, a little worker constructs inside will heal it up, and that's basically how do you get your constructs back. And your Moppets as well. Now, Golem Pilot, kind of discussed this already. With this class, you don't actually have the golem beside you, but rather you're inside the golem. And you need to use your action to command this golem. So, effectively, you're playing the golem at that point. However, there isn't really that much to track. Basically, all you need is to know your golem's hit points and your golem's strength, dexterity, and constitution. Everything else, it uses your stats. Your proficiencies, it uses. If you're proficient with stealth, your golem is proficient with stealth, just because you're the one controlling it and commanding it. Obviously, you would know the best way to go about doing that. And then it uses your wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. All your mental scores. I figured that makes a lot of sense because this is really just like a big puppet, for a lack of a better term, and you're the brains, it's the brawn. You know what I mean? Now, Golem Cores. This is effectively their spell system. So you can go ahead and learn some cores. As you level up, you'll learn more. And you can prepare a certain amount of them, as we showed off here at the little table. And you can use these in various ways. The main way is actually powering your Moppets, which are these cute little guys down there. But while they're on your person and inactive, a Moppet with a core can be socketed into the golem to provide it various boosts. As we can see here on the table, the cores are associated with different schools of magic. So if you got Abjuration, it's a very defensive school of magic. +1 AC. Makes sense. Conjuration. A lot of teleportation spells are in there. So movement makes a lot of sense. And so on and so forth. The reason that I've kind of gone with this system is because, sure, you yourself can wear like magic armor and give yourself a +2 to bonus or whatever if you were like a fighter. because, again, this class doesn't get armor. Maybe that's a bad example, but you know what I mean, right? Your golem isn't gonna get access to any kind of, like, magic armor or magic weapons. So this is sort of how to make up for it, and it's very customizable and flexible while still being pretty straightforward. And it's like, okay, I've got 2 Abjuration cores on myself and 1 Conjuration core. Cool, I know exactly what that does. Instead of having to go through some list and being like, oh god, this part goes in this part, and I need to have a prerequisite for this. Yeah. Little too crunchy. We want to try and make this as smooth as possible. The reason I bring that up is because this class actually started its life as a mech class. I'm sure you can see the whole through line from there, being the fact that you still pilot your golem rather than having it walk beside you. But pretty early on, I figured that that's not really gonna have a lot of buy-in at most tables, unless you're running like an Eberron campaign, maybe. But yeah, like every campaign has golems in it. Like even the Forgotten Realms, you've got iron golems, right? So this class can fit in anywhere. If your DM is saying otherwise, ask them, are golems going to appear in your game? If yes, then this makes sense in their setting. Anyway, creating a Moppet. Your beautiful little friends marching into battle, or giving you power in the palm of your hand, because these have 2 ways to be used. You've got an inactive effect and an active effect. So inactive, they basically function as a little trinket or doodad or what have you. One example is it can act as a little magical detector, like a Geiger counter of some kind. So it functions kind of similar to basically how detect magic works, but, you know, it's a little handheld device that's doing it. I should preface, though, that maybe that's not necessarily the best example, because this isn't a spellcasting class, and the vast majority, I want to say like 98% of the Golem cores don't have anything to do with, like, oh, it's just this spell, but here. You know what I mean? They're all very unique. I think I'll probably show a few examples. I know I don't normally have that available in the preview document over on the DM's Guild, but hey, just for you, for watching all the way through the video, you can have it. Anyway, moving on. Active effects. This is when you actually throw your Moppet out, it comes alive, and starts marching around the battlefield. And depending on what core you have, it can produce certain effects in a field or aura, whatever you want to call it, around the Moppet. So, thematically, if we look here, so what the little character is holding in his hand is the Moppet in its inactive state, and this up here is how I kind of visualize it being active, where it's walking around. Now, of course, obviously, you don't need to have your Moppets look exactly like this. If you really wanted to, you could be, I don't know, pretty out there and have them flavored as little mechanical spiders that they wrap themselves up in, like, steel cable or something, like a cocoon, when they're inactive. And then you throw them out, they burst free and do whatever they need to do, you know? But yeah, this was a pretty solid idea, if I do say so myself. I'm quite happy with how this turned out, because the alternative would have been a part system, where you kind of, like, you're like, okay, I want this arm in this one, and this arm in that one, and it was just so boring, you know? That could definitely be done very easily with this, the Golem boost system. Plus, you know, your magic, right? You can flavor it how you want. If you socket an abjuration core in, perhaps like little shield plates appear on your golem and what have you. Anyway, moving on, we have the golem weapons. This, my friends, this is when your golem starts to actually wreak havoc. At 3rd level, you pick one weapon, and at 6th level, you pick another one. So you're kind of limited, but the golem is a large creature, and therefore, if you're familiar with how D&D works with its large creatures, it's going to take a longsword, for example. Normally, 1d10. This is a large longsword, specifically wieldable by your large golem. And this is now going to do 2d10 per hit. Pretty hefty, pretty big power jump, but you also have to realize that the golem is a limited resource, in effect, because once it goes down, you now don't have access to this feature, effectively, which normally would be a bad thing design-wise, but because this class is all about sort of like trade-offs and you're powerful now and weaker later kind of thing, I felt that was totally fine to do. Now, normally I would skip over this. Ability score improvement, pretty bog standard. However, you can see here that your golem also increases whenever you get an ability score increase. It can actually go up to 24 with this, which, yeah, kind of powerful, but you can only increase its strength, dexterity, and con, because it uses your mental stats for everything else. Basically the same kind of reasoning for golem weapons. You know, your golem is powerful, and I definitely wanted it to feel powerful. But once you're without your golem, you now barely have any strength, because I doubt you'd kind of want to pump your strength. With this class, you really want to boost your intelligence as high as it goes. Mainly for the Moppets. Your, as you can see here, your core effect all scales off your intelligence, so very important there. Anyway, Overdrive at level 5. This is when every class gets some sort of extra attack or extra attack-like ability. And this is no different. Although, yeah, it is a little different. It's not just a standard extra attack. So because your golem is using a large weapon, and it's using twice the damage dice, I figured that just giving your golem extra attack and spewing out 4 damage dice per turn, pretty nuts, even if you are doing, like, flat damage, you know, your modifier's worth of damage only twice, that's still pretty powerful. So it is limited to your proficiency bonus per long rest, and only once per turn as well. And then the other thing you're going to be picking up at 5th level is magical metal. As I alluded to before, because this golem isn't going to be getting any magic weapons, I needed a way for it to overcome that damage hurdle. And I believe this has been done a few times before around level 5. I'm pretty sure. It's been a while, but I think that's totally fine. Because that's when like the second tier of play begins, and that totally makes sense. I mean, your golem is like a magical creation. I could maybe see why people would be like, hey, couldn't you get magic attacks at 1st level? But that would kind of ruin the balance of a lot of encounters, I feel. Anyway, going on to page 7. Eye for the Animated. This is a very cool ribbon feature. Basically, the idea I had with this one is you wander into a room, you look at a statue, and you're like, hey, DM, the statue. And the DM's like, yes, the statue. And you're like, oh, the statue. Alright, let's go to the next room. I can see people having a lot of fun with this. Not necessarily a very powerful ability, but very cool for roleplay. And Workshop Sanctuary at 7th level. This is extra cool. You basically get a little pocket realm that you can bring you and your friends into and make a little area. You can put whatever you want in there, use it as storage, use it as a little base. However, it's not without its drawbacks. Or not necessarily drawbacks, but more so balance issues. Well, not issues. It's not broken. That was the wrong word. What I'm trying to get at is, with this, at least at 7th level, you're going to create a portal. You and your friends go into the portal, and that portal location remains the same. However, once you're all inside, you, air quotes, close it, and the door doesn't fully close. What remains in its place is a small mote of energy that sheds bright light in a fairly wide area. So, even if you're trying to be smart and be like, okay, cool, we're on the run, let's hide in that cave, and let's go into base and do what we need to do. Say you're being chased by someone, right? It's night, and they're looking around, and they suddenly see a bright light shining from a cave. They're definitely going to investigate. So that's kind of the way I balance this. Starting at level 14, though, you can close the gate fully. It is completely invisible and does not shed any light. So, this isn't necessarily a long rest for free kind of feature, because if you're, on the run from, typical forest creatures, like wolves and whatever, they're gonna pay no heed to this. They're just gonna look at it and be like, oh, that's not food. Doesn't smell like food. Well, let's move on. But if you're fighting intelligent creatures, they're definitely gonna want to investigate this and figure out what it is. Like a hag, for example. They're gonna be like, what is this thing in my forest? It needs to go. So they're probably gonna surround it and do whatever else they need to do. So on and so forth. The reason this is at 7th level is because that's when wizards kind of get sort of similar-ish spells. So that was my thinking there. Strong Arm is also something you're going to be picking up at 7th level. Pretty simple feature. You can basically throw your Moppets further when you activate them. Basically doubles the range on your throw. Pretty nifty. Then, Broadcast at level 10. This is when things start getting real spicy for your Moppets. Although I suppose maybe Strong Arm was the beginnings of it. But normally their aura extends out only 10 feet. It now extends 15 feet, and that gets extra spicy with their 11th level feature. This lets you command not one, but 2 Moppets with a single bonus action, meaning you can have 2 active effects on the field with increased size, by the way, at any given time. Of course, though, these Moppets, as I kind of glossed over, actually, these Moppets aren't your typical pet. They don't actually have an attack, they don't have a bite, a pummel, or whatever. They can only use their action to utilize whatever core you have installed. So, you kind of have to be a little smart with how you play them, especially because they're pretty fragile. Their hit points is only twice your intelligence modifier and 3 times your Golemancer level. So, they're gonna go down unless you play smart with them. So, weaving them in between your allies is probably your best bet. But yeah, this was my thought here was creating an extra attack-like option without just being like, okay, your golem can attack again. Whoop-de-doo. Because this not only gives power while you're in your golem, because you can still use your bonus action to command your Moppet while you're wreaking havoc in your golem, but it also makes you a little bit more safer while you're outside of your golem, and makes you yourself a lot more effective on the battlefield, even without the gigantic weaponry of your golem. Now, getting into the late game territory, we have emergency eject, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You basically push the big red button, you shoot back out the end, and you have to land at the end of your turn. So it'll give you 60 feet of fly speed, but only till the end of your turn. So if you're like, woohoo, I'm going to fly straight up, what could go wrong? You then come plummeting down as soon as your turn is ended, and take a little bit of fall damage, just a little bit. So, the best way to use this is if there's a ledge nearby, you want to fly up onto the ledge, and then start hucking your Moppets down there to support that way. This is mainly to be used when your Golem has been reduced to 0 hit points, but if there's some sort of other reason, you can go ahead and do it whenever you want. And you'll get this back on a short rest, too, so pretty nice. Now, full power at level 17. This is when you start entering the final tier of play. And this is also one of the reasons why I didn't want to just go with, at 11th level, to have 3 Golem attacks. Because eventually, at 17th, you are no longer limited by how many times you can use your overdrive feature, meaning your Golem can attack twice every single turn. And that's a little bit of damage, to say the very least. Especially if you crit with this boy. Ooh. Ooh. That's real nice. Now, sadly, there isn't... your Golem's not going to benefit from any kind of champion fighter because, your DM might allow that, but really, you want to pick up champion fighter levels after going all the way to 17th when you could get out with a bang? This is cool. This is your self-destruct. My Golem is screwed. Let's press the self-destruct button and the emergency eject button. See what happens. Total mayhem. That's what happens. 10d8 force damage. So, this is, yes, very powerful, but you're only getting this once, because your Golem is destroyed as soon as you use this ability. You can either use it 2 ways. You can do it when your Golem is still alive, and you can sort of use it as a maneuvering, positioning kind of tool. You're like, alright, cool, let's get the Golem up here, and then press the self-destruct button. And hopefully you've got a use of your emergency eject left. And then the other way, which is to wait for your Golem to go down, and then do it. The issue with that is you can't move your Golem. So are you really just going to stay in your Golem in its 0 hit point state, which at that point your Golem is no longer providing cover for you, so you're basically just a sitting duck, and while you wait for your allies to get out of there? And if your DM's smart, the enemies are going to be like, I wonder why all their teammates are moving away from the Golem. Perhaps we should do the same thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just pretty proud of this ability as well. Very cool, very flavorful, very explosive. And last but not least, at least for the base class features, Great Core. So, the whole idea with this is, yeah, you can make little cores for your Moppet, but you haven't really figured out how to make a giant core that's properly stabilized. But now you have. So, you can give your main Golem a Golem Core. Anything that your Moppet can have, this can have it, though the prerequisite of 9th level or lower is a little bit of a limiting factor, but if I let it go any higher than that, honestly, it would get pretty broken, and this is already a pretty powerful feature. So you can switch the Great Core, just like your Moppets, between an inactive state and an active state. The thing is, though, while it's in the inactive state, your Golem gets the bonus. So that could be really cool. You could basically design your entire build around just the inactive effect. Or you could design it around the active effect. Now, I'm sure you're hankering to figure out what the cores are. I promise I will get to you that. I'll give you a little teaser. But first, let's go over an example of a design philosophy. This was... I'll go through my scaffolding. I'll do that first, I think. So, your design philosophy, this is the Vanguard. Basically your big, tanky knight kind of character. At first level, you're going to get Golem Vanguard, and it basically follows the same thing. So, you know, for your Livewood subclass, you get Golem, Livewood, and so on and so forth. Basically, there's one Golem stat block that you're pulling from on page 14, and every subclass flavors your Golem in a little way. At first level, they get, a shield, and they can block, so it's not crazy powerful. And then you're going to get your Golemancer tools at first level as well. This really defines your aesthetic. So, in this case, Smith's tools and Tinker's tools, because it's a big, heavily armored knight. So what do you think? It's literally just a big suit of armor that's, really, really big. And then at third level, you're getting your core specialization. This is the same, similar for every class. In the Vanguard's case, you're specializing in Abjuration and Evocation cores. You get to pick some from those two schools of magic, and any core installed in a Moppet from Abjuration or Evocation will give them extra hit points. So this really defines how you sort of play with your Moppets, because sure, you could use Necromancy, but why would you not use Abjuration and sort of look into that? Now, that's not to say you can't use those, it's just more of like a little bonus, right? I'm really good at keeping my Abjuration effects up and on the battlefield. But hey, if I want to do a little bit of healing, I can with my Necromancy core. You know, that kind of thing. Gives people a choice. And this also feels like strictly a feature not for your Golem, but for your actual character. Because it sort of gives them a choice and be like, aha, I'm a specialist in this, instead of being like, oh, my Golem's doing everything again. You know what I mean? I've said that. And now we get into the 6th, 9th, and 15th, which is literally all Golem features. So your subclass provides a little bit at 1st and 3rd here for you. The rest of it is all about flavoring your Golem. So, at level 6, you get an offensive feature, in this case forward charge. You basically get your Golem to raise their shield and use it as a battering ram to push things out of the way. Real fun, real nice. And then at 6th level is a defensive/utility feature, in this case Aegis, which improves their block ability from level 1. And finally, 15th level, Whirling Onslaught. This is another offensive ability, if you couldn't somehow tell by the name. And again, like I said, this is the scaffolding. So every single subclass is going to follow this Golem, tools, core specialization, offensive feature, defensive feature, offensive feature. So, as promised, we will open up the Golem Core index. So, I'm only going to give you 2 examples, and just from Abjuration, because, you know, if you want to figure out how you can actually play the class, well, sorry to say, you're going to have to go pick it up on the DM's Guild. But hey, hopefully you've liked what you've seen here, so maybe you will be willing to go ahead and pick it up. Anyway, this is also a really good example, because we have Barrier, which is a 13th level and higher prerequisite, as well as requiring you to know 3 Abjuration cores already. And then Buffer, which is a one you can pick up at level 2. So, Barrier, its inactive effect, lets you summon and dismiss a magical shield. And if you'll remember, this class is not proficient in shields, meaning that this is the only way you can really get a shield unless you want a feat or to multi-class, but if you want to go full Golemancer, this is the way to do it. And as you can see here, I'll give you the quick rundown. The active effect, really cool. Basically, it's almost like a wall of force, but you can move it. So, the aura at this state in the game would be 15 feet wide, or not 15 feet wide, it's a 15-foot aura. And what it does is it makes a barrier all around the edge of the aura. And the aura, or the barrier rather, has an AC equal to your Moppet's AC, which, if you remember, does scale up with your proficiency bonus. However, when the Moppet takes damage, or when the barrier takes damage rather, the Moppet takes an equal amount of force damage, and it cannot be reduced by any means. So, this right here, this whole damage thing, that's going to come up a lot when it comes to the core system. And that's one of the main balancing factors when I was designing this magic system. And then, let's go take a look at Buffer, shall we? So, its inactive effect is that when you start your turn, you gain an amount of temporary hit points equal to your intelligence modifier. Which, yeah, pretty powerful. But it's, 1, only you, and can only ever be you. You can't give this to an ally. And 2, reminder that this is a D6 class with no armor proficiencies. So, I mean, could this be broken with multiclassing? I mean, as we've seen before, there's a lot of things, even in the base game, that's broken with multiclassing. But if you wanted this, you would actually need to get a 2-level dip into Golemancer just to pick this up. And at that point, would it be worth it? Maybe. I don't know. But the Golemancer isn't really that great for multiclassing into, because, you know, you're in your golem, right? And there's actually a little blurb up above that says, because it's so cramped inside, you can't cast spells. So that sort of narrows out any sort of caster. And if you're a fighter, you know, you've got your extra attack, but you can't use your extra attack while you're in your golem. You have to use the overdrive. So this class basically balances itself out when it comes to the whole multi-classing debate. So I'm not really too worried there. Now, sidetracked, as I always am, let's jump back to Buffer and look at its active effect. So, the Moppet, instead, now gains a number of temporary hit points equal to twice your intelligence modifier at the start of its turn. While the aura is active, when a creature within the aura takes damage, the Moppet can use its reaction to reduce that damage by half. However, the Moppet then takes force damage equal to the damage reduced. This damage cannot be lowered by any means. So, again, this is going to come up a lot when it comes to it, because if you think about it, right, you know, you've got your typical casters. As they're getting more powerful, they've got more stats and more spell slots and what have you. But with this system, everything kind of more or less stays the same. The way it's balanced is your Moppets are going to get more AC and more HP as you gain in level, meaning that they have more staying power on the battlefield. So your effects don't necessarily get powerful or more powerful, although when it comes to damaging cores, they do scale up as well. But like things like this barrier, for example, right? This is going to stick around even further, the further into the game you go, because your Golem, or your Moppets rather, are going to be a lot more difficult to take out, and that's kind of the balancing factor there. So, that's why I put in this whole taking additional damage type of thing, because otherwise, if you could somehow position the Moppet in a way where it's guaranteed to not take any damage, that would just be way too powerful. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I don't think I was necessarily getting that point across the best way. But yeah, this has been a look at the Golemancer and sort of my design philosophy behind it. I'm sure I could have gone on for way longer, but I think this is a pretty good look into it. And I know we've gone for, oh boy, almost 42 minutes now. Thank you for sticking with me to the end, by the way. Really appreciate that. If you have any more comments or questions, leave them down below in the YouTube. I want to say description box, but that's definitely not the right word. It's a mistake that every YouTuber makes. Comment section, that's the word. There we go. But anyway, yeah, if you like what you see, feel free to check this out on the DMs Guild. Maybe pick up a copy, pick up 2 copies, pick up 3 copies. Hey, while you're at it, maybe pick up a 4th copy. Anyway, or alternatively, maybe just spend your money on the Patreon. You know, I got a lot of subclasses on there. I've got a, I think at present, a spell book with 50 unique spells. Mind you, it's all for free, but if you want early access to it, hey, you know, drop a Patreon support subscription, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, with the general YouTube stuff out of the way. Oh yeah, like and subscribe! Wow, how did I forget that one? Because it's something I don't normally do anyway. Yeah, I've rambled on for far too long here. So, I will leave it there. I, of course, have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.